Hi, this is Bret the Hitman Hart, and I want to introduce you to some of my great memories of Calgary.
I wrestled the 650-pound tiger here.
Stu liked, he liked starting guys off.
Wrestling isn't table tennis.
It was a kind of a dog-eat-dog world kind of household,
As thousands of fans watched, one of the sport's most popular stars, Owen Hart, died during a high-flying entrance into the ring.
It was devastating to all of us. First blow to the family. This was life and death, and this was death. And, that was the first tragedy we had.
Hello. In this video, we explore the pulsating saga of the Hart family, a name synonymous with wrestling royalty, yet shadowed by profound tragedy. The Hart family's tale begins with the legendary Stu Hart. His influence extended beyond the ropes, crafting a legacy through his children, who would go on to shape professional wrestling. Bret the Hitman Hart and Owen Hart emerged as superstars, their technical prowess and charismatic personas winning championships and captivating fans worldwide. But with light comes darkness. The wrestling world was shaken by the untimely death of Owen Hart in a tragic accident during an event, a moment that remains one of the sport's darkest hours. Jim the Anvil Neidhart married into the family and formed one half of the iconic Hart Foundation tag team, also faced personal struggles, leaving a bittersweet legacy upon his passing. Davey Boy Smith, known as the British Bulldog, and another family in-law, dazzled audiences with his strength and agility, but similarly battled demons that led to his early demise. The resonance of these losses profoundly affected Bret Hart, who not only grieved for his brother and friends, but also endured his own physical and emotional battles, including a career-ending injury and a stroke. His journey reflects the resilience and vulnerability at the core of the Hart narrative. As we peel back the layers of this storied family, we also shine a light on the achievements of extended members like Natalya Neidhart, Tyson Kidd, and the British Bulldog's son, Davey Boy Smith Jr. What does it take to bear such a revered yet burdensome legacy? How has the new generation of Harts continued to honour their heritage while forging their own paths in the wrestling world? Broken Hearts, a tragic dynasty, delves deep into the glory and grief of wrestling's most famous family, exploring the bonds that hold them together through their highest highs and lowest lows. Join us as we explore the indelible mark left by the Harts on professional wrestling, examining not only the shimmering belts and championship glory, but also the personal struggles and the resilience required to endure and thrive amidst adversity. Prepare to be gripped by the story of the Harts, a tale of a dynasty both broken and brilliant, forever etched into the annals of wrestling history.
Stu Hart, the man, has been promoting wrestling for 50 years. He's been around for 80 years. And to me, is the best there is. Plus, I married his daughter.
Bret Hart once said, "My dad was a submission wrestler, and he loved to stretch anyone who dared to show up at his door. I remember him stretching the daylights out of Father Roberts, the Catholic priest, who baptized all the Hart kids. Father Roberts got closer to God in my father's basement dungeon than he felt comfortable with. But Stu was non-denominational. He stretched a rabbi once, too."
Yeah, come on. Bret took it a little serious. Well,
Stu Hart's your dad.
Yeah, Stu Hart's your fucking, but Bret took it a little, no shit.
At the heart of the Hart family's wrestling legacy stands Stu Hart, a towering figure whose influence reverberates throughout the world of professional wrestling. Born into the challenges of the early 20th century, Stu exemplified resilience, qualities that he infused into the fabric of the Hart wrestling ethos.
Get a peanut butter sandwich that some kid had left behind to get even any sustenance. I mean, they were talking about, the poorest of the poor.
Stu Hart's journey into wrestling began on the amateur mats. He captured various titles before transitioning to professional wrestling. He wrestled across North America, becoming known for his formidable grappling skills and tough, no-nonsense style.
This is probably, for me, the king of all sort of birthplace and memories for me. I mean, this doesn't get any better than, my whole childhood is here. When I look at that house, that top floor on the, not the top, but on the balcony there, that second floor, that was where my mom and dad's bedroom was on the right there. And down on the left, the windows in the middle on the second floor, that was my mom and dad's office. That was all filing cabinets and telephones, and that's where the wrestling world, just lit up in that room. And then the very next room on the other side of the wall is the bedroom that I grew up in with 5 boys.
The on-screen Stampede Wrestling was a key part of Stu Hart's success, however. It would be behind the scenes where Hart would truly leave his legacy. The Dungeon, a training room in the basement of the Hart family home, was where Stu conducted grueling training sessions that became legendary for their intensity and rigour. Wrestlers from around the world came to endure these sessions, which were as much about mental endurance as they were about physical prowess. The Dungeon's reputation was synonymous with technical excellence and resilience, core elements of Stu's philosophy of wrestling and life. Stu's significant impact extended through the careers of those he trained, including his sons and future legends of the industry, emphasizing that success in wrestling requires not only physical strength, but also heart, resilience, an unwavering commitment to the craft. Despite his respected status, Stu Hart's training methods have been a subject of controversy and speculation. Some described his training sessions as torturous, and accusations surfaced that Hart was a sadist who derived pleasure from inflicting pain rather than teaching professional wrestling. It was said that he particularly enjoyed testing the strength of football players and bodybuilders, pushing them to their limits in ways that some perceived as excessive. However, many close to Hart have denied these claims, painting a picture of a man who was stern in training, yet compassionate and generous in personal dealings. His 7th son, Ross Hart, mentioned that although his father was demanding in the training room, he was always mindful of his students' limits and never intended to cause actual harm. Stu's daughter-in-law Martha Hart noted in her book that while the training was extremely painful at times, Stu was careful not to apply too much pressure, aiming more to instill fear rather than inflict actual injury. She acknowledged that while physical injuries were rare, the psychological impact could be significant, citing her husband Owen's childhood fears of his father's fierce reputation. Owen Hart himself spoke about being intimidated by his father during his youth, but also respecting him, a sentiment that prevented any misbehaviour. Keith Hart, another of Stu's sons, suggested in the documentary Hitman Hart, Wrestling with Shadows, that outsiders might misinterpret Stu's harsh demeanour as psychopathy without understanding the complex personality beneath. Wrestling manager Jim Cornette theorised that Stu's tough upbringing and challenging early life experiences might have contributed to this seemingly contradictory behaviour, both a dedicated family man and a demanding trainer. Stu Hart's legacy in professional wrestling is undeniably profound, yet it is tinged with complexities that reflect the challenges and harsh realities of the sport itself. As we delve deeper into the Hart family's history, these nuances provide a richer understanding of the pressures and responsibilities borne by wrestling's most storied dynasty. That's a lot of brothers, but it is only the start. The list of notable names that passed through this notoriously tortuous and brutal training regime is long and comprehensive. So many future icons would get their start being stretched and brutalized by Stu Hart, including Abdullah the Butcher, Nikolai Volkov, Billy Jack Haynes, Davey Boy Smith, David Hart Smith, Dynamite Kid, Fritz von Erich, Greg Valentine, Jim Neidhart, Junkyard Dog, Jushin Thunder Liger, Justin Credible, Ken Shamrock, Lance Storm, Mark Henry, Masahiro Chono, Steve Blackman, the Honky Tonk Man, and Tyson Kidd. Some of the athletes to test their might in the Dungeon would go even further, with some creating legacies as true pioneers and legends, most notably Rowdy Roddy Piper. In his memoirs, Roddy Piper reveals a familial link to the Hart family, a connection he reiterated during an interview with TNA. This intriguing detail once featured as a trivia question on WWE's Monday Night Raw. Moreover, Bret Hart has expressed a deep personal bond with Piper, noting that Piper was the sole wrestler to visit him in the hospital following his stroke, underscoring their relationship as profoundly brotherly. Stu Hart also trained Jake Roberts, Edge, Brian Pillman, Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit, who said, I take a lot of pride in being one of the last guys that had the hands-on training from Stu Hart when I went to the Hart family to train. It was a good experience just to be there, to imagine all the people that had been through there and all the blood, sweat and tears that had been paid. Going to the Hart family for training was kind of like, if you're a very religious person, going to the Vatican.
You know, my dad started training fellas down there. He had the gym, I think, built for himself, and then he, would just invite different, guys who wanted to get into wrestling. He'd invite them over to practice, and I think it just went from there. And then the boys, when they were growing up, they saw different wrestlers training there, and they just kind of followed in my dad's footsteps.
Stu Hart's marital union with Helen Smith in 1947 marked the beginning of a profound familial legacy, deeply intertwined with both triumph and sorrow. Their marriage, spanning over 5 decades, was rooted in a shared passion for wrestling and family life. The Hart couple settled in Calgary, Alberta, in a sprawling residence that would famously become known as the Hart Mansion. This home was not merely a building, but a cradle for nurturing a unique and formidable dynasty. Together, Stu and Helen raised 12 children. Stu Hart, miraculously, was unscathed from the collision, though the force of the impact was such that he broke the car's steering wheel. Unfortunately, Helen Hart suffered several injuries that required a prolonged hospital stay. This incident led to their oldest child, Smith, staying with Helen's parents, Elizabeth and Harry Smith, for 2 years. This accident is one of the many trials faced by the Hart family, a narrative woven into the broader tapestry of their life, marked by both remarkable achievements and profound tragedies. The resilience shown by Stu and Helen during and after the accident reflects the strength that would characterize the Hart family's approach to subsequent challenges. Each child grew up immersed in the family's wrestling tradition, often sparring in the mansion's basement, affectionately dubbed the Dungeon. This large family was a tight-knit unit, bound by the ropes of the wrestling ring and the strong values instilled by their parents. However, the extensive Hart family also faced significant adversities. The very bond that brought them together also placed them in the glare of public scrutiny, especially following several tragic incidents that struck the family. With 36 third-generation Harts and 4 members of the 4th generation, the family's influence in wrestling continues to be felt. The Hart family, synonymous with professional wrestling, boasts a lineage of 8 brothers, each contributing uniquely to the sport. These siblings, born into the wrestling dynasty founded by Stu Hart, carved their paths within and beyond the squared circle. Smith Stuart Hart, the eldest of the Hart brothers, sustaining the family's legacy in the wrestling industry.
Remember, whatever clothes we were wearing was kind of from Salvation Army.
Bruce Hart, known for his articulate and sharp character, served multiple roles as a retired professional wrestler and booker. He often took the helm in creative directions for Stampede Wrestling, contributing to its storylines and match setups.
My dad even had his own plane, so he could fly around from town to town and go to all the shows.
Keith William Hart, as a retired professional wrestler, Keith's career in wrestling was marked by his participation in both singles and tag team competitions, often alongside his brothers in Stampede Wrestling events. His career, although cut short by his premature death, was remembered for his dedication, a tragedy that deeply impacted his family. Their father was preparing to take Dean to the hospital when he passed away. He kept much of the accident's details to himself, rarely sharing what happened with his family. Bret felt that they had drifted apart in recent years and was deeply unsatisfied with how their last interactions had gone. He never had the chance to repair their relationship, and this weighed heavily on him. The unresolved issues between them, the loss of Dean, also affected family friend and fellow wrestler Dory Funk Jr., who was deeply saddened. Bret Sergeant Hart, perhaps the most famous of the Hart brothers, earned him an iconic status in professional wrestling, to the training of future wrestlers in the Hart family's infamous dungeon and maintaining the operational aspects of Stampede Wrestling. Owen Hart, the youngest, was renowned for his charisma and athleticism. His promising career was tragically cut short by an accident during a WWE pay-per-view event in 1999, leaving a lasting impact on the wrestling world. Each brother left a distinct mark on professional wrestling. Bret said, "Owen and I were kind of pushed into it. There were 8 boys in the family, and the other 6 would have given anything to be pro wrestlers. So beware, Stuart. The two who didn't want to become pro wrestlers became just that. And the two who were amateur wrestlers, just like Stuart is, were myself and Owen. You never know.
Hi, this is Bret the Hitman Hart, and I want to introduce you to some of my great memories of Calgary.
Stu's most enduring contribution to wrestling was not just in the ring, it was through Stampede Wrestling, the promotion he founded in Alberta, Canada. This promotion became a crucial talent incubator, known for its high standards and Stu's hands-on training approach. However, there was one time where Stu's hands were seemingly tied. When Vince McMahon offered to buy Stampede Wrestling under the WWE banner, the always-in-control figurehead Hart had his arm twisted behind his own back for a change. On the situation, Bret explained, they worked out a deal. Vince McMahon bought my dad's wrestling company for, I believe it was 1984, and kind of took over. And he forgot to pay my dad. He forgot. It's one of those things that Vince McMahon tended to do. But he never paid my father. I think it was like he was going to confront Vince McMahon, and I believe he did, about not being paid, and I'm not sure what happened. But I just know that I think they were like, we can't interfere now, and if we do anything, it's going to cut my career short, right when I really started to show everybody how good I was. However, WWE's ownership of Stampede Wrestling was short-lived, as WWE returned it to the Harts in the fall of 1985. This kicked off a bold new era of Stampede, one fully run by Stu's son, Bruce Hart, and bolstered by an impressive array of up-and-coming wrestlers. Along with Owen Hart, the new Stampede boasted Brian Pillman, Chris Benoit, and rookie NJPW exports like Shinya Hashimoto and Hiroshi Hase. However, backstage issues and financial problems eventually became too much, and Stampede went dormant in late 1989. However, sadly, it has proven that it is not only the direct bloodline of the Hart family which has so often been struck by tragedy. The Dynamite Kid, real name Thomas Billington, was one of the most influential wrestlers of his time, known for his high-flying, technical prowess and physical intensity. However, his career and personal life were marred by numerous controversies and a tragic downfall. One of the most glaring issues was his physical decline due to years of reckless in-ring style and heavy drug use. Dynamite's commitment to pushing his body to its limits led to severe back injuries that ultimately ended his career prematurely. He became addicted to painkillers and steroids, which worsened his health, both mentally and physically. His once impressive physique deteriorated, and his later years were spent confined to a wheelchair. His sad death in 2018 at the age of 60 was a reminder of how his excessive lifestyle and dangerous choices led to a tragic end. Dynamite Kid's drug issues were central to his downfall. His use of steroids to maintain his intense in-ring style became well known, especially during the 1980s, when the wrestling industry had little oversight regarding performance-enhancing drugs. His physical transformation and explosive energy in the ring were attributed to his drug use, but these substances took a toll on his body and his personal life. Dynamite's addiction to painkillers in particular became crippling after a serious back injury that left him with spinal damage. His dependence on drugs further eroded his relationships, especially within the wrestling community, where his once admired reputation began to crumble. He became increasingly isolated, angry, and unpredictable, leading to a decline that seemed almost inevitable given the extreme nature of his lifestyle. By the end of his life, Dynamite Kid's relationship with Davey Boy and many others from his wrestling past was fractured beyond repair. His legacy, while influential, became overshadowed by his tragic personal decline and the controversies that followed him until his death.
Bret took me under his wing, took me like one of his brothers, and he took care of me. He really did.
Born in Golborne, Lancashire, England in 1962, Davey Boy Smith, famously known as the British Bulldog, embarked on his professional wrestling career as a teenager. His journey began with a television appearance at the tender age of 15, wrestling alongside his cousin Tom Billington, who the wrestling world would come to know as the Dynamite Kid. This early exposure was a precursor to his eventual discovery by Bruce Hart, who brought Smith and Billington to Canada to train in the legendary Dungeon of Stu Hart. The duo's training under Stu Hart's rigorous regime paid off as they began competing in Hart's Stampede wrestling promotion, both as teammates and rivals, also finding success in Japan. Their tag team, known as the British Bulldogs, caught the attention of Vince McMahon, leading to their transition to WWE when McMahon bought out Stampede in 1984. However, backstage issues led both Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid to leave WWE in 1988. Smith returned in 1990 as a singles star after a falling out with his cousin. He trademarked the British Bulldog name and worked his way back up, leading to a monumental match with his brother-in-law Bret Hart at SummerSlam in 1992. Unfortunately, he lost the title to Shawn Michaels a few months later and was released from WWE amid reports of receiving shipments of HGH alongside the Ultimate Warrior. Despite this setback, Smith's career continued with stints in Japan and WCW before returning to WWE in 1994. He became involved in the memorable Bret vs. Owen Hart storyline and, after a brief and ill-fated partnership with Lex Luger, teamed up with Owen Hart to win his second tag team title. Smith was also crowned the first WWE European champion and later joined the revamped Hart Foundation. However, following the infamous Montreal Screwjob in 1997, he left WWE again, this time joining Bret Hart in WCW. In September 1998, Smith suffered a severe back injury, leading to a spinal infection that almost paralyzed him. During his recovery, he was released by WCW and became addicted to painkillers and morphine. Jim Ross spoke about Smith's struggles. "I think we're all just waiting for Davey to kick out of this matter and address his issues head on. But you gotta set your ego at the door and fess up that you got an issue. But we're here to help you. Some guys accept the help, and some guys just look at it as a sign of weakness. The one thing that wrestlers don't want, especially a promoter or booker, is to perceive them as weak. I think that would have been the case in this situation. Davey was battling two opponents, one in the ring and one outside the ring. I can't get mad at him for that." Smith returned to WWE in 1999, engaging in feuds with stars like The Rock and Eddie Guerrero before leaving the company for the final time in 2000. Around this period, he entered rehab for addiction issues stemming from his 1998 injury and divorced Diana Hart, later dating Bruce Hart's estranged wife, Andrea Redding. Davey Boy Smith had begun training his son, Harry, for a wrestling career. Tragically, while vacationing with Redding in British Columbia, Smith suffered a massive heart attack on May 18, 2002, and died at just 39 years old. His death was ruled a result of natural causes due to an enlarged heart, though his father, Sid, insisted otherwise. "I believe my son was murdered. He was so fit and healthy. It doesn't make sense. He was about to make a comeback. I'm so shocked I don't know what to do, but I might go to Canada to try to find out more. We are all devastated. He will never be forgotten." In the background, some tension was building between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, both on screen and off. SummerSlam allowed Bret to beat The Undertaker to win the WWE Championship in a match that featured Shawn Michaels as the referee, further adding subtext to this intriguing competition. It was around this time that WCW made a large offer towards Bret, promising a contract that financially far overshadowed his current WWF paycheck. But Bret was initially decisive. He was going to stay loyal to the WWF, even if they hadn't been treating him the best, even if he had, until recently, been overlooked to the likes of huge muscle men like Hogan and Luger. Bret was an honourable man and wasn't going to turn his back on those who had paid his wages for so many years. But this didn't stop Vince McMahon, long-standing owner and chairman of WWE, and Bret to come to a standstill over new contract negotiations. With the clock running out on Hart's duties, neither man was willing to budge. Hart was willing to hand over the title via a loss, and even said he'd do so after his contract had expired. However, due to the previous conflicts with Shawn Michaels, his only stipulation was that he wouldn't drop the belt to HBK. This led to a situation where WWE's main champion was out of contract and still in possession of his most important and historical belt. With WCW circling, Vince McMahon, not wanting to lose one of his biggest stars and his biggest titles at the same time, made an industry-changing decision. One that not only changed the fate of Bret Hart and those around him, Vince McMahon's long-running character arc, the fans' perception of WWE, and the path that sports entertainment would take from that moment forth. The incident which will now and forever be held up in wrestling folklore. The Montreal Screwjob. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this wrestling universe-altering event. November the 9th, Survivor Series, a show where Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart already had a lot of history. The match of the evening, which just so happened to be in the Molson Centre in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, obviously the home country of the Hitman. For him, this just added more pressure. Under the bright lights, the pressure boiled over when Shawn Michaels had Bret temporarily in his own finisher, the famous sharpshooter submission. A truly villainous move on your average show, but when the ref Ol Hebner signalled that Bret had submitted, the arena deflated with confusion. Bret clearly hadn't tapped out or shouted that he had submitted. He hadn't made any gestures toward the official and was only in the hold for a second or two. In this moment, he lost the WWE Championship to Shawn Michaels. But that wasn't the reason that Hart tried to wrestle Shawn Michaels to the mat after the bell. Shot straight over and loomed onto Vince, who had made the call ringside, and spat directly into his face. Bret knew that he had been betrayed. Barring some run-ins with wrestling's biggest cunt, Hulk Hogan, the industry-famous backstabbing Bret had up until this point managed to avoid. I believe that the universe is completely random and non-determined, but sometimes in the wrestling universe, the stars do seem to align. His greatest rival, Shawn Michaels, his finishing move, the sharpshooter, his beloved home country of Canada, and his last match, all culminating in one of the biggest instances of double-crossing and backstabbing ever seen in professional wrestling. On his way out of the door of WWF for his then final time, Bret walked backstage and gave Vince McMahon a black eye, picked up his patented leather jacket and shades, and rode off towards Orlando Studios and WCW. Hart, always a traditionalist who valued hard work over all else, didn't even take a day off. He continued to train and work matches straight after this loss, choosing instead to bury his anguish in his passion for the squared circle. I feel totally torn on this issue. It's nothing to do with me, and he can live his life however he wants to, but it makes me feel so sad for Bret, knowing how the road went following what is one of the most miserable days in all of pro wrestling's history. He won the US title and WCW title from Goldberg on 2 different Nitros on WCW's flagship weekly show, as well as beating Sting in this period. Throughout his tenure in the Ted Turner-owned promotion, Bret faced all of the biggest stars it had to offer, but never had the same spark and magic that we had seen during his time at the WWF. And even as a young fan watching WCW here in the UK, I never gravitated towards him, and upon reflection, he just didn't seem like the same person after everything that had come before.
There's an ongoing demand by the wrestling fans to make the storylines, beyond their imagination all the time. Amaze me with where it's going to go next.
With interest in the NWO at its lowest point by the middle of 1999, the groups had fizzled out, with Hogan returning to his original heroics and good guy persona, but WCW head office knew that without the full force of their most popular team, they would continue to struggle against their rivals in WWE in the ongoing Monday Night War. In an attempt to revitalize interest in the group, the NWO 2000 were created, with the heavy emphasis on new in New World Order. On the formation of the NWO 2000 faction, when Bret Hart said the band is back together, little could we have known just how badly this concept would fail. It was meant to be a reinvigoration of the group, with the hot addition of Bret Hart, who was raring to be at the centre of something more important in WCW since his widely anticipated arrival in the company. It looked like everything was laid out perfectly. Then, Bret was severely injured during a match against Goldberg at Starrcade. He suffered a head injury and was forced to rehabilitate before it eventually caused him to retire. This left his newly formed NWO without their main selling point and took away the importance of the faction. People wanted to see Bret Hart in WCW. Him being aligned with the New World Order brought Bret Hart fans to the brand, and now all of that was lost. But for years, he would not step back inside the offices or ring of the now WWE. He refused to come to terms with the dishonour that Vince McMahon had showed him and vowed to never forgive him. In wrestling, as in life, things can change fast. Old wounds heal, egos become less inflamed, and apologies can be made. Bret returned in 2010 to the WWE for a role in a few matches, including one storyline with a classic no-holds-barred match against Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 26, and a chance to win his very last wrestling title from The Miz in a no-DQ match on Raw, in the form of the US title belt, before days later vacating the championship. His last match in WWE came at SummerSlam in 2015, when Team WWE, consisting of John Cena, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Edge, John Morrison, R-Truth and Daniel Bryan, beat the Nexus, which was comprised of Wade Barrett, Darren Young, David Otunga, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Michael Tarver and Skip Sheffield in an elimination match, something that is still hotly contested to this day, with many believing that the young up-and-comers should have won the match and continued their ascension to the top. WWE said on Bret Hart's retirement, Hart found beauty in wrestling simplicity. He strode to the ring against the whir of an electric guitar, pausing only to gift his trademark shades to a small child waiting ringside. Inside the ring, he wasted no movement, systematically focusing on his opponent's weaknesses until they were too tired to endure his patented sharpshooter submission. He was also an innovator of offense and possessed an uncanny ability to create pinning combinations out of seemingly any predicament.
The saddest day in wrestling for me, I don't know, maybe the Owen Hart thing. Maybe that. Because I had never heard of a professional wrestler dying in the ring before.
Oh my God, man. That Owen Hart kept morale up. I mean, Owen Hart is the best, man.
Owen was the one guy that was always pushing back. You know, I don't want to do this angle. I don't want to look like I'm cheating on my wife with Deborah.
One of my best friends in this business, but to see him, you know, walk in a fast food restaurant, get gas in a rent-a-car, deal with people at the rent-a-car counter, at hotels, just day-to-day life, in airports, the genuine integrity that he had.
That night, Kansas City, Missouri.
Hart died in the fall. He's survived by a wife, 2 children. His brother Bret Hart was 33.
Blue Blazer falls 50 feet to his death in a stunt gone wrong. An accident as millions of people watched on television.
The first time I ever considered that wrestling was scripted came on a Monday evening in 1999. At school that day, I heard from a classmate of a tragedy that had occurred the night prior. I didn't believe of the horrific incident at first, especially being so young. It was one of the first times I'd encountered death in such a direct manner. Due to my lack of willingness to believe such a thing could happen in wrestling, my friend implored me to explore the internet for wrestling forums. As soon as I got home, I quickly discovered a dark hole of information I'd previously never thought imaginable. I found pages and pages of tributes discussing the death of Owen Hart at the WWF Over the Edge pay-per-view on the 23rd of May 1999. My tiny mind exploded as I read for hours about Owen Hart's life, his family, and his illustrious wrestling career. I stumbled deeper and saw online commenters discussing Owen Hart's character, his promo technique, and his ability to make his opponents look great in the ring. I saw a transcript which explained Jim Ross's explanation on live television only minutes after Owen's fall. Jim explained that this is not a storyline, this is not part of the show. Me, at 8 years old, the veil of ignorance moved just a minuscule amount as I wondered what good old JR Jim Ross meant. Storyline? What storyline? I was so confused. However, I was instantly distracted by the promise of what seemed like infinite wrestling information on its forums. I fell deeper in love with the history of Owen Hart and felt a real sense of sadness and remorse from the online community for the tragedy that had happened not 24 hours before. In the high-stakes world of professional wrestling, spectacle and danger walk hand in hand, enthralling audiences with their electrifying dance. Yet, on the night of May 23rd, 1999, the line between entertainment and tragedy was crossed in the most heart-wrenching manner. Owen was a beloved member of the Hart family of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. His untimely death not only left a void in the hearts of his fans and family, but also ignited a critical conversation about the safety protocols and the lengths to which sports entertainment might go in the name of spectacle. Owen Hart, often remembered for his humorous personality and technical finesse, once noted, "I don't want to be remembered as a great wrestler. I want to be remembered as a great person who just happened to be a wrestler." His words underscore the dual identity he carried as a performer beloved by audiences and as a man deeply respected by his peers. He had worked hard his whole life and had reached levels of success many could only dream of. Owen was beginning to think more about his personal life and how time on the road and in the ring was keeping him from his loved ones. "When my contract is up, I'm out of wrestling. I've made plans. I've been smart with my fiscal affairs. Financially, I'll be set. I really want to devote a lot of time to my family. I've bought some property on a lake. I plan on doing a lot of boating and fishing. I want to continue to stay in shape. And who knows, I might do 10 weeks a year in Japan. Something just to motivate me to keep in shape, keep involved a little bit, but not have to deal with the politics, pressures that are so intense right now." However, that dream of retirement would never come to pass. On that fateful night, as Hart prepared for an aerial stunt that would see him descend into the ring, clad in his blue blazer superhero costume, horror-struck, the equipment malfunctioned and Hart fell tragically, an event witnessed live by an arena full of fans. The broadcast play-by-play announcer Jim Ross solemnly informed television viewers, "This is not part of the entertainment tonight. This is as real can be here." This statement, raw and direct, captured the grave reality of the situation, piercing the veil of wrestling's staged theatrics. In the wake of the accident, Vince McMahon, the CEO of WWE, faced intense scrutiny. His decision to continue the event after the incident drew widespread criticism and debate. McMahon later defended his decision, stating, "The decision was made in what we thought was the best interest of everyone, including the performers and the fans." This video sets the stage for an exploration into the complexities of Owen Hart's death and its aftermath. It delves into the legacy left by Hart, the wrestling industry's responses and reforms regarding safety, and the ongoing dialogue about the balance between entertainment and the well-being of its performers. Through this tragic event, the indelible mark left by Owen Hart on wrestling continues to resonate, prompting reflections on risk, responsibility, and remembrance in the high-stakes world of professional wrestling.
And indeed, tragedy in the ring tonight in the world of pro wrestling. A form of entertainment which is known for its fantastic fiction is now experiencing horrific nonfiction. WWF wrestler Owen Hart, known professionally as the Blue Blazer, died tonight in Kansas City when he fell 50 feet into the ring as he was being lowered from the ceiling at Kemper Arena. The fall occurred in an event called Over the Edge, which was being televised to a pay-per-view audience. The 33-year-old Hart given immediate CPR by paramedics as a stunned crowd watched in horror, realizing that something had terribly gone wrong.
In Kansas City, Missouri, the WWF were running through their usual smooth operations of what, at the time, seemed like another evening of hard-hitting action and over-the-top personalities. Little more than what fans had come to expect at the time. By the time the event was over, the fans in attendance and at home, the WWF staff and all of the wrestlers were involved in a moment that none will soon forget. One which will live in infamy for all of pro wrestling's existence.
It's our top story at 11. A former World Wrestling Federation champ is dead tonight. Once king of the ring, Owen Hart fell from the ceiling during an event in Kansas City. The audience at first thought it was a stunt. Millions of fans were tuned in on pay-per-view TV.
As the night rolled on, time came for the Intercontinental title match between the Godfather and Owen Hart's character, the Blue Blazer. To make an impactful entrance, Owen was set to glide to the ring on a harness connected to a long grapple line, his cape flying in the wind as this comedic superhero drew the attention of all in attendance. The lights of uncountable camera flashes reflect off of the glittering Blue Blazer's outfit and alight the arena, with fans capturing a moment in history. As Owen Hart was lowering towards the ring, his harness catch released and he became unhooked from the supporting cable. As fans watched on in horror, the unthinkable happened. Owen, plummeting towards the top rope, from almost 80 feet above the ring and springing back onto the canvas. The atmosphere that fell over the arena as WWF cut the lights must have been sickening. Fans at home watching live were still unaware of the incident, WWF playing a pre-taped vignette as the feed had enough of a time delay for the production team to hide the horrors which were unfolding in front of them.
I think everybody was trying to figure out whether it was part of the act or not. And I think until the end, people still didn't know for sure.
WWF then cut only to shots of the crowd to allow time for the situation to be dealt with, controversially so as to be able to let the show continue. Controversial in hindsight perhaps, but at the time, WWF had no idea what was happening and how things would play out over the next 30 minutes.
Right before we were going to walk out, I just heard them screaming, saying it's not a fake, get a real EMT back here. He's not breathing, the ripcord broke or something, I don't know. And they rushed him back. He was blue in the face, and they just rushed him out.
Fans in the arena, however, were left initially in the dark as WWF turned off the lights and played the television vignette on the large screens to try and draw attention away from Owen Hart.
It was like a rope broke or something.
Did it look like he got hurt really bad when he hit?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. My aunt, she wrestles, and she said that she thought he was dead when he hit.
Who was now laying prone in the ring, flat on his back with swarms of medical staff and other WWF employees rushing to his aid. As Jim Ross continued to reiterate the magnitude of the incident to fans at home, the real tragedy unfolded at the nearby Truman Medical Center, where, after several valiant attempts to resuscitate and revive Owen Hart, he sadly died due to internal bleeding caused by blunt force trauma. Truly, one of the most hard-hitting and emotional moments of all of pro wrestling history for so many fans and those employed in the business alike. The next night, Raw is Owen aired, a tribute episode of Monday Night Raw from the Kill Center in St. Louis. The broadcast began with all of the WWF staff, medical team, wrestlers and bookers out on the entrance ramp with Howard Finkel calling for a 10-bell salute, the traditional way in which wrestling has paid respect to fallen performers throughout its history. As the last bell tolled on the life of Owen Hart, the screen cut to a video package of his career highlights, his 2 runs as Intercontinental Champion, 1 reign as European Champion, his time as part of the Tag Team Champions, and his victory of the King of the Ring title. One of the more heart-wrenching moments occurred when Mark Henry read aloud his poem in dedication to Owen, visibly distraught as he held back floods of tears, Mark Henry conveying emotions so deeply felt by those around him. All of the WWF staff were given the choice of continuing working that show, with Vince McMahon recognising the emotional toll Owen Hart's death had taken on his employees.
We in the World Wrestling Federation are saddened by the tragic accident that occurred here tonight. And we send our condolences and sympathy to Owen Hart's family.
Monday Night Raw continued in part as usual with 10 matches on the night, but a less rehearsed, less scripted feel to the fights, as all storylines were halted for the evening. The programme features interviews that were not shot in the usual high-energy fashion, with Mick Foley solemnly stepping out of character, visibly shattered by the loss of his friend, explaining how Owen Hart was Mick Foley's son's favourite wrestler and how his son had been so proud to receive a haircut similar to that of his idol. Bradshaw spoke openly about the locker room's affection for their lost brother. Bradshaw mentioned how Owen Hart was one of the least flashy wrestlers outside of the ring, where Hart rarely afforded himself the luxuries that many others with similar bank accounts in wrestling would have, in order to save for his retirement and life with his wife and children. This one really hits home and humanises the incident further. It's so sad to think about what could have been for Owen and his family if things had played out in a less cruel manner. Many others paid tribute to the iconic figure on that show, including Val Venus, Test and The Rock. When Jeff Jarrett defeated Godfather for the Intercontinental title, the arena filled with claps and shouts of respect, with Jeff Jarrett screaming Owen Hart's name whilst holding aloft the title. Raw went off the air following a salute from then backstage leader Stone Cold Steve Austin, who smashed a few cans of beers for Owen and, in a cathartic moment for all involved, left one last beer in the ring.
He was such a beloved guy. Yeah. Legit. Didn't have an enemy in the world. Really talented guy, but if he had no talent, it would have mattered. He's a really beloved guy.
Oh, my God, man. That Owen Hart kept my morale up. I mean, Owen Hart is the best, man. I swear to God, I used to love to come to work just because Owen was going to be there, and you know he was going to be doing something crazy.
Ken Shamrock, another wrestling legend, shared his disbelief and sorrow on the anniversary of Owen's death. I can't believe it's been 19 years, remembering Owen Hart today, showcasing the lasting impact Owen had on his peers. Natalya Neidhart, Owen's niece and current WWE superstar, also pays homage to her uncle, emphasising his enduring presence in their lives. 20 years you've been missed. We love you, King of Hearts. Mark Henry shared how Owen influenced him personally and professionally, helping him navigate the challenges of the wrestling industry with kindness and professionalism. Then, I started meeting people like Owen, and those were the guys that were like, hey, this is the way you need to be. In the weeks that followed, online forums and newsrooms were alight with controversy over the manner in which the events had unfolded leading up to Owen Hart's death. The speculation revolved around WWF's use of a less safe version of the harness and cable which Hart was using at the time.
Why didn't you tell the live audience? Jim Ross came on and very eloquently and I think very appropriately told the audience watching at home via pay-per-view that Owen Hart had died. Yet the people in Kansas City, Missouri at the arena didn't know that. Why didn't you tell them?
Well, my guts were telling me, don't announce to the live audience that Owen passed away. And I don't exactly know why, really, other than the fact that I don't know that it's necessarily fair for someone who was there to have that announcement. They were going to find out for sure, as everyone else in the world found out in due time. Was it appropriate at that time to announce after the event was over, oh, by the way, Owen passed away? That doesn't seem right to me. I don't know what would have happened to the audience. I don't know how they would have felt. I don't know what they would have done, whether or not there could have been any panic or what have you. I don't know. It just seemed not to be the right thing to do to announce to the live audience that Owen had passed away.
In the shadowy corridors of wrestling's backstage politics, the tale of Owen Hart's tumultuous final years in the WWF is tinged with intrigue and hidden agendas. After the infamous Montreal Screwjob, a match manipulated to strip Bret Hart of his championship without his consent, Owen found himself ensnared in a web of contractual disputes and familial loyalty, while fellow wrestlers Jim Neidhart and Davey Boy Smith sought their own escapes from WWF, with Davey Boy purportedly paying a hefty $100,000 ransom for his freedom. Owen's attempts to flee were thwarted. Vince McMahon, the puppet master behind WWF's grand stage, allegedly refused Owen's release, instead silencing his discontent with a raise from $300,000 to $400,000 a year. The plot thickens as the Hart brothers, Bret and Owen, orchestrated a storyline to manipulate McMahon. Owen claimed that Bret would disown him if he remained in WWF, a narrative both brothers supposedly crafted together. Yet, whispers within the Hart family tell a different tale. Bruce Hart, another brother, insists that the estrangement between Bret and Owen was real and irreparable, a rift that remained unbridged until Owen's tragic death. Martha Hart, Owen's widow, paints a picture of a man caught in a psychological trap, disillusioned and disheartened after his brother Bret's departure from WWF. Despite expressing reservations to his colleagues, voicing a premonition of unease about the stunt, Owen reluctantly agreed to the dangerous performance. The mysteries surrounding Owen Hart's final years in WWF weave a narrative of manipulation, familial discord, and a wrestler's struggle against the controlling machinations of a powerful entertainment empire. It leaves one pondering what unseen forces and concealed motives were truly at play in the tragic saga of Owen Hart.
This idea was taken to him, and it was suggested that he come out of the ceiling. And I know there was a bit of a discomfort about the danger in it, but somehow over the weekend he got sort of talked into doing it again.
As part of Owen's Blue Blazer character, the performer wanted to move away from the ultra-serious, straight-faced Owen Hart and move towards the entertainment potential of a comedy-styled superhero. Vince McMahon had a marketing idea. Now, it's getting that they have so many guys that do the high-flying and stuff, but when I came into the WWF, the first thing I really didn't want to have been Bret Hart's little brother. He thought, Owen Hart, he's got a lot of ability, a lot of acrobatic maneuvers, young, and they thought they could market me as a Mighty Mouse Superman kind of character that was young and fighting evil, justice prevailing, but was doing all this high-flying acrobatic stuff that was entertaining. So they came up with the idea. It was not a big priority to them. Well, whatever, get a costume put together. They said they wanted a lot of feathers, glitter, colourful colours. So I had a lady here in Calgary make it. She just kind of put together what I had in mind. Then I took it to Vince McMahon and said, this is what they made me. He said, all right, we're going to call you the Blue Blazer. And now, if I was doing things different, I would have had a sleeker, more dynamic costume. Feathers aren't rugged. The sick-looking chicken they had as an emblem or logo was kind of weak. It was Vince McMahon's idea, and a lady here incorporated the design, style, and all I had to do was go out and perform. One of the hardest things was doing those backflips, where you had to jump up and land on the top rope. It's precision movement. To execute that night after night for 3 years, and you're under a microscope. You're Bret Hart's little brother. Everyone wants to see if you're going to make it. I managed to sustain myself, do everything right, and keep my feet on the ground, weather the storm when the Blue Blazer finally gets to unveil the mask and become who I really wanted to become. Prior to the event, Owen Hart had played with the formula of a wrestler being repelled towards the ring from the rafters when he would be a few feet from the ground, releasing his safety catch and purposely falling flat on his face, drawing laughs and applause from the crowd.
As a son of a wrestler and then growing up to be a wrestler in a profession where you knew it was never real, but to everyone else that talks to you, it is real. I can sort of say like Batman almost. You put the costume on, and you go out and you do the whole thing, and then you come back and you're Bruce Wayne.
WWF and Hart had tried and tested the stunt, and it had proved effective at garnering their required response from the crowd at house shows. However, in order to facilitate the manoeuvre, a different, less safe latch had to be used for the quick release, and without a secondary safety cable, which was the standard at the time. For a month, the accusations flew at WWF and their backroom staff until the Hart family filed a formal lawsuit against the entertainment behemoth, as well as the manufacturer of the harness and cable equipment, stating how dangerous and needless the stunt was, as well as arguing that the necessary safety checks and requirements were not in place, directly leading to Owen Hart's demise. The tragic death of Owen Hart during a WWE event in 1999 sparked significant discussions and investigations into the safety protocols that were in place and what could have been done differently to prevent such a catastrophe. This essay explores the various dimensions of safety, response, and ethical considerations surrounding the incident and how improvements could potentially have changed the outcome. First and foremost, the primary factor in Owen Hart's death was the malfunction of the equipment used to lower him into the ring. Reports indicated that the harness system used was not designed for the stunt being performed. The quick release mechanism, meant for sailboat racing, was ill-suited for suspending a human above a crowded arena. A more suitable harness system, designed specifically for aerial stunts, featuring redundant safety measures and fail-safes, could have prevented the accident. The selection of equipment should have involved rigorous testing and approval by experienced stunt coordinators and safety engineers. Regular safety drills and checks could have identified potential malfunctions or misuse of the equipment. Enhanced safety protocols, including secondary support systems, would have been crucial. Using harnesses with multiple points of release control inaccessible to the performer during the stunt could have been a critical preventive measure. Once the accident occurred, the immediate medical response was another critical factor. Reports from the event suggest that medical personnel attended to Hart within moments of his fall, and he was transported to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. However, the promptness and efficiency of the medical response in such scenarios are paramount. Pre-event emergency drills specific to the venue and event type could have ensured a quicker, more coordinated response. Communication protocols should have been established and practiced, including direct lines to local emergency services and on-site medical staff trained specifically for high-risk entertainment events. From a moral standpoint, there are significant questions about the decision to continue the event after such a severe accident. This decision may have impacted the emotional and psychological state of the performers and potentially affected the quality of care Owen Hart received. A more morally sound approach would have been to halt further proceedings to focus entirely on the emergency at hand, providing clear access and full attention to the crisis from all event personnel. Furthermore, ensuring that all performers are fully briefed on the safety aspects of their performances, including the risks and emergency procedures, is not just a safety measure, but a moral obligation. Wrestlers and performers should have the right to refuse participation in stunts they deem unsafe, or for which they feel inadequately prepared or informed. Owen Hart's death was a devastating reminder of the importance of stringent safety measures in professional wrestling and entertainment at large. It highlighted the need for industry-wide standards in equipment use, emergency preparedness, and ethical decision-making regarding performer safety. Ensuring that these systems are in place and rigorously adhered to is essential not only for the safety of the performers, but also for the integrity and sustainability of the sporting and entertainment industries. Preventing such tragedies in the future requires a commitment to continuous improvement in safety protocols and a steadfast moral compass guiding all decisions. The legal aftermath of Owen Hart's death was a complex and multifaceted battle that had significant implications for WWE and the Hart family. Following the tragic accident during a WWE pay-per-view event in 1999, where Owen Hart fell to his death due to equipment failure, his widow, Martha Hart, initiated legal action against WWE. Martha Hart filed a wrongful death lawsuit against WWE, alleging that the company had been grossly negligent. The lawsuit emphasized that the rigging equipment used for Owen's stunt was handled by personnel who were not adequately qualified, and the safety measures in place were insufficient. The case pointed out serious lapses in WWE's oversight of the stunt's execution, including the claim that the quick release mechanism was inherently dangerous, and that Owen Hart was not properly trained to use it. In a significant legal countermove, WWE responded by suing Martha Hart for breach of contract. WWE's lawsuit was primarily aimed at moving the jurisdiction of the case from Missouri to Connecticut. Connecticut laws regarding punitive damages and contractual disputes were seen as more favorable to WWE. This legal strategy was indicative of WWE's approach to managing the lawsuit, attempting to limit potential liabilities and control the narrative around the case. The jurisdictional battle was a critical aspect of the legal proceedings. Missouri, where the accident occurred, allowed for punitive damages, which could potentially lead to a larger financial penalty for WWE. In contrast, Connecticut, where WWE is headquartered, did not allow for punitive damages under the same circumstances. This move by WWE to change the jurisdiction was seen as an attempt to mitigate the financial impact of the lawsuit. The legal battle culminated in a settlement in 2000, where WWE agreed to pay $18 million to Martha Hart. The settlement ended the wrongful death lawsuit, but left many questions unanswered about the responsibility and safety protocols in professional wrestling. Martha Hart's public statements after the settlement expressed a deep dissatisfaction with how WWE handled the situation, both legally and ethically. Throughout these legal proceedings, the case highlighted the often contentious relationship between individual wrestlers and the larger wrestling corporations that manage the sport. The legal strategies employed by WWE, including jurisdictional challenges and counter-lawsuits, illustrate the complex dynamics at play when such tragic incidents lead to public and legal scrutiny. The Owen Hart case remains a significant point of reference in discussions about wrestler safety, corporate responsibility, and the legal frameworks governing entertainment sports. On November 2nd, 2000, after a year and a half in and out of courtrooms, WWF settled with the Hart family, being paid $18 million, whilst also dropping the lawsuit against the equipment manufacturer. On November 2nd, 2000, after a year and a half in and out of courtrooms, WWF settled with the Hart family, being paid $18 million, whilst also dropping the lawsuit against the equipment manufacturer. Owen was the youngest of 12 siblings and evidently left an enormous hole in the Hart family. His most famous sibling was Bret Hart, who, on the DVD Bret Hitman Hart, spoke about his regret in not being with Owen before he performed the stunt, stating that he would have tried his best to stop Owen from making this ill-fated decision. As is understandable with such a horrific event, the Hart family have held bitter feelings towards WWE since, disagreeing with the company's decision to continue the over-the-edge pay-per-view in wake of what had happened. Owen Hart's widow is also a target for controversy, as she has made the decision as owner of the rights to Owen's career to sue WWE for its use of his televised performances.
It's a poorly done DVD because of all the restraints and the limitations that Martha put on it, and to me that's such a lousy thing to have happen. And Martha, I think Owen would turn in his grave if he knew how much trouble Martha's gone to erase his career and to make sure that nobody enjoys anything about his career today. It's a bitterness and a selfishness that I can't stand by anymore.
Something which Bret Hart staunchly disagrees with, siding with WWE in his ideas on how Owen's matches and screen time should be available for all to watch and relive their fond memories, not held in an archive as Martha Hart would seemingly like. In an interview with CBS Sports, Bret Hart explained, "I think she's done more to erase my brother Owen's memory than she ever did to remember him." Martha Hart has since stated, "With Bret, what happened was, throughout the lawsuit he was very supportive, but he was battling at the time with Vince. And so he wanted us to include his footage in our settlement agreement. So he didn't have access to his wrestling footage because Vince, so he had this agenda that's what he wanted included in our settlement agreement. He was helping me, but I had to say to him, this isn't about your wrestling footage. But when we weren't able to obtain that for him, he got very angry, and that's when he then went back and confronted Vince McMahon and then got his footage and stuff like that. So that was disappointing for me, and that sort of created a rift between us. But then he seemed to really flip-flop, and he really embraced Vince all of a sudden. And then he was disrespecting me, and before he sort of hated Vince McMahon. And then he turned that hate towards me, and then he was saying things all the time in the media about me disrespecting Owen's memory, and that I hadn't done anything that I should let him be in the WWE Hall of Fame." In reference to his brother's widow, "It really bothers me," Bret remarked, "that the fans that love Owen so much don't get a chance to remember him."
At this point in time, because after Owen's passing, the Harts, so much tumultuousness and craziness, do you have any relationship with the family at all now?
Unfortunately, I don't. And that's really unfortunate. But I mean, I don't know if people are really aware of everything that's sort of transpired.
Sure, of course.
Lawsuit, but the family, they weren't that supportive of my lawsuit against WWE, and the worst part of it was that some of the family actively worked against me, and then other ones just remained silent, and that was almost as hard as the ones that worked against me. So it really, when you break the trust, and I felt really betrayed and sort of left alone and without any support, then, although I've forgiven them and I'm totally, past that, and I wish them well, and trust me, like, my life hasn't been easy, and I certainly wouldn't wish, harm on anybody. I hope life has been kind to all. But, some things, the damage is done.
Martha used a large chunk of the money received from the lawsuit settlement with WWE to found a charity in Owen Hart's name, which aims to help students from low-income families with tuition fees, book purchases, and other bills that are incurred. In conclusion, the legacy of Owen Hart transcends the bounds of the wrestling ring, touching lives and influencing careers long after his tragic departure. Owen's untimely death is a stark reminder of the perils faced by those who entertain us, pushing the limits of spectacle in the squared circle. It is a sobering thought that his demise, while deeply mourned, also served as a catalyst for positive change and reflection within the community and among fans. As we look back on Owen Hart's career, it becomes apparent that his reputation was impeccable, a rare find in the world of professional wrestling. Shawn Michaels, in his autobiography Heartbreak and Triumph, attests to Owen's unblemished character, suggesting that even a prolonged tribute would yield no disparagement, but rather an outpouring of respect and admiration. This speaks volumes about the man Owen was, not just a performer, but a genuine, respected individual whose integrity and kindness were as clear as his talent in the ring. Owen Hart's passing did more than evoke sorrow. It sparked a journey of discovery and homage for many, including myself. It led me to delve into the rich history of wrestling, a path lined with stories of dedication, sacrifice, and passion. Owen's story is a poignant chapter in this narrative, a reminder of both the human cost of entertainment and the deep connections formed between performers and their audience. As fans and members of the wrestling community, we carry forward the memory of Owen Hart, not only by recounting his matches, but by honouring his spirit, a spirit that inspires kindness, dedication, and an enduring love for wrestling. Owen may no longer be with us, but his legacy is undiminished. A beacon for those who follow in his footsteps and a reminder of the profound impact one individual can have on the lives of many.
His was the name in Canadian wrestling, an iconic and tragic figure, a self-made man who rose from poverty to become one of the most influential people in the wrestling world.
He wasn't a success because of happenstance. He worked hard all the time. He plotted out a course and he stuck to it.
And this is Jack Dempsey, of course. He was
born poor on a farm in Saskatchewan, Stu Hart grew up to become a champion wrestler, even fought in New York's Madison Square Garden. In 1948, he founded Stampede Wrestling, and over the years developed and promoted some of the biggest names in the business.
He also started up a wrestling promotion that was world famous, helped put Calgary on the map in many ways, started the careers of many big-name wrestlers.
His talent as a wrestling impresario helped move the sport from dark gym basements to Saturday morning television. Hart sold Stampede Wrestling to the World Wrestling Federation in 1984. Then he turned his family into a wrestling dynasty. His son Bret the Hitman Hart was one of the most famous members of the WWF. Owen the Blue Blazer Hart was also a champion. In recent years, though, the Hart family has suffered some painful losses. 4 years ago, Owen Hart fell to his death during a wrestling stunt on pay-per-view TV. Another son, Dean, died of kidney failure in 1990. And in 1996, Stu Hart's 13-year-old grandson died of flesh-eating disease. Stu Hart had been in poor health for several years. 2 weeks ago, he was admitted to this Calgary hospital, suffering from complications from diabetes. Then he had a stroke.
Well, he was in reasonably good health, fairly stable, and they thought, maybe a few weeks in the hospital, and then he'd be released, and the stroke, I think, just caught everybody off guard.
Stu Hart was 88 years old. His funeral will be held in Calgary next week. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Calgary.
A true wrestling patriarch was laid to rest on Thursday. Stu Hart, the father of Calgary's famous Hart family and the father of Stampede Wrestling, was honored at a funeral in his hometown. He died last week after a bout of pneumonia, a stroke, and failed kidneys. Nearly 500 people attended the service, including prominent members of the wrestling world and Alberta Premier Ralph Klein. They were there to celebrate the life of a legend.
There was never a better teacher. There was never a better coach, never a better mentor in our business history than Stu Hart.
There's really no way to calculate his immense contributions. I mean, to a certain extent, in our world at least, Stu put, I dare say, Calgary, if not Canada, on the map on an international perspective in our world.
Stu Hart may be best known for Stampede Wrestling, but he was also a great amateur wrestler and professional football player. He spent some time with the Edmonton Eskimos.
Jim Neidhart, a towering figure in the world of professional wrestling, began his journey as a high school shot put star in California during the early 1970s. His athletic prowess even led to brief tryouts with NFL teams before he found his true calling in the ring. Neidhart's professional wrestling career took off in the late 1970s when he joined Stu Hart's Stampede wrestling promotion in Calgary. It was here that he became intertwined with the legendary Hart family, a relationship that would define his career and life. Stu Hart, recognizing Neidhart's talent and potential, made him a central part of the promotion. When Stu sold Stampede Wrestling to Vince McMahon in the mid-1980s, Neidhart, alongside his brother-in-law Bret Hart, became key figures in the deal. This marked the beginning of Neidhart's rise to fame in the WWF, where he formed the iconic Hart Foundation with Bret. Virgil's career started way back in 1985 and took off when he became the manservant of Ted DiBiase in a role which had many racial undertones and hasn't aged well in retrospect. However, it was once Virgil had left the mainstream wrestling scene that things started to sour for his career. During a show which took place at the National Wrestling Conference, Virgil came to the ring. His fame that he'd built up within WWF followed him, and the fans were delighted with his arrival. His opponent on the night was a wrestler by the name of Thug, whose appearance in a match is as shocking today as it would have been back in the 90s. Dressed in a KKK white hood, the Thug made his way to the ring to the boos of the crowd in attendance as the match commentators stumbled through a confused attempt to explain what was happening. The match starts with a man dressed in full white Klansman robes and hood stepping into the ring with Virgil whilst the Thug remains outside. As the match quickly dissolves into a brawl, Virgil attacks the man stood opposite him in the ring as the rest of the clan descend. As Virgil is overwhelmed by the two attackers, the hooded figure removes his garb to reveal that it is in fact Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who proceeds to thrash Virgil around the ring. The other member of the clan, still hooded, continually struggles with seeing through his pillowcase hood, and with every punch and kick has to readjust it to prevent it from falling off completely. Jim Neidhart then proceeds to take his now removed robes and tie them around Virgil's neck, choking him out and dragging him around the mat, before throwing him over the top ropes and using the robes as a makeshift noose, delivering some painfully unpleasant imagery as Virgil continues to suffocate whilst hanging. Unable to move or defend himself, Virgil's lifeless body is then punched and kicked by Neidhart before the match officials step in to remove the KKK from the building, leaving Virgil unconscious on the floor outside the ring. I'm not sure what anyone involved with this angle was thinking. It's shocking, sure. It draws boos from the crowd. It is fiction after all, but it's also disgusting and quite offensive. In action movies, when racists are used, it is almost entirely as the villains, which, as an audience, we enjoy seeing defeated by the end of the story. But what purpose did this horrific event serve? Virgil lost, utterly broken by his oppressors, made to look stupid for falling to the sneak attack, and defeated by the end. There was no comeback or redemption, nobody to cheer and nothing to enjoy. Truly a terrible day in the history of pro wrestling. Despite his professional success, Neidhart's later years were marked by personal struggles. He battled Alzheimer's disease, a condition that ultimately contributed to his tragic early death. On a fateful morning in Wesley Chapel, Florida, Neidhart fell at home, hit his head, and succumbed to his injury at the age of 63. The Pasco Sheriff's Office confirmed that no foul play was suspected, but it was believed that Neidhart suffered a grand mal seizure related to his Alzheimer's. His brother-in-law, Ross Hart, recounted the sorrowful morning, explaining that Neidhart collapsed while adjusting the air conditioner. He got up Monday morning and went to lower the temperature on the air conditioner, and he just collapsed, and I think died pretty quickly, Ross Hart said. This sudden and tragic end was a heartbreaking close to the life of a man who had once been a pillar of strength and vitality. Jim Neidhart's legacy continues through his daughter, WWE superstar Natalya, and his son-in-law, former WWE performer Tyson Kidd. Bret Hart, the only surviving member of that era's Hart Foundation, expressed his grief on social media, mourning the loss of his longtime partner and friend. Jimmy Hart, their former manager, reminisced about Neidhart's charisma and humour, lamenting the loss of a true wrestling legend. As the wrestling world bid farewell to Jim the Anvil Neidhart, they remembered not just a wrestler, but a beloved member of the Hart family. His contributions to the sport and his indomitable spirit left an indelible mark on all who knew him. Neidhart's death was a poignant reminder of the fragility of life, casting a shadow over the bright memories of his time in the ring. Jimmy Hart said, "He was witty, he was funny, he seemed sharp as a tack." Teddy Hart, born Edward Ellsworth Annis, is a professional wrestler with deep ties to the legendary Hart family, known for their legacy in the wrestling world. Despite his early promise and achievements, Hart's career has been marred by a string of controversies and legal issues that have overshadowed his in-ring abilities. Once seen as a rising star, his tumultuous personal life and repeated run-ins with the law have earned him as much notoriety as fame. Hart's wrestling career began with significant promise. As a third-generation wrestler, he quickly made a name for himself by becoming the youngest talent ever signed to the World Wrestling Federation, now WWE. Despite this early success, Hart's tenure in WWE was short-lived, as his release soon followed. The reasons for his departure were largely attributed to his behaviour, both in and out of the ring, which often pushed the boundaries of professionalism. His conduct during independent wrestling matches, often characterized by erratic behavior and disregard for established wrestling norms, cemented his reputation as a controversial figure in the wrestling community.
The same guy who's had drug charge after drug charge, hooker after hooker.
Wrestler who is a part of the legendary Hart family.
It's now been 5 years since this mother of three was last seen in Polk County.
Despite these setbacks, he continued to wrestle for various promotions, such as Major League Wrestling, MLW, away and Jersey All Pro Wrestling, maintaining a level of visibility and success. However, it is Teddy Hart's personal life and legal troubles that have cast the largest shadow over his career. Throughout the years, Hart has faced numerous criminal charges, ranging from sexual assault to drug possession. In December 2014, he was wanted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on sexual assault charges involving 2 women. Although the charges were eventually dropped, the scandal left a lasting stain on his reputation. Further arrests followed, including an incident in Texas in 2017, where Hart was charged with DUI, evading arrest, and auto theft, charges that were also later dropped. The legal troubles didn't stop there. In 2020, Hart was arrested multiple times in Virginia, facing charges that included possession of controlled substances and assault. In one particularly disturbing incident, he was accused of assaulting his then-girlfriend, independent wrestler Maria Manick. Fellow wrestler Ace Montana, who claimed to have intervened in the assault by pulling a gun on Hart, called the authorities, leading to Hart's arrest on charges of strangulation. These incidents have contributed to the public perception of Hart as an unstable and unpredictable figure, both inside and outside the wrestling world. In addition to his legal issues, Hart's personal life has also been marked by tragedy and controversy. In 2016, his girlfriend Samantha Fiddler went missing in Florida, a disappearance that remains unsolved. This incident added another layer of complexity to Hart's already troubled narrative, leaving many to speculate about his potential involvement, though no formal charges have been brought against him in connection with her disappearance. Mental health has also played a role in Hart's troubled journey. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Hart has openly admitted that he does not take medication to manage his condition, which may contribute to his erratic behaviour. His struggles with mental health echo the experiences of other members of his family, as his great-grandfather and brother were also reported to have suffered from bipolar disorder. This connection to his family's history of mental illness may offer some context for the challenges he has faced throughout his life, though it does not excuse his actions. Despite his controversies, Hart remains a figure in the wrestling world. He continues to wrestle on the independent circuit and has been involved in training younger wrestlers. His passion for the sport is evident, but his inability to stay out of legal trouble has limited his potential. He also has an unusual hobby for a professional wrestler. He breeds Persian cats, occasionally bringing them to matches and incorporating them into storylines, adding a peculiar dimension to his persona. Natalia Neidhart, a talented wrestler with deep roots in wrestling history, has had an impressive career in WWE. However, there have been several negative aspects along the way that have overshadowed her potential and personal life. One of the most embarrassing storylines she was involved in occurred in 2012 when WWE scripted her to have a flatulence problem. This storyline became a stain on her career and a reflection of how the company at times fails to fully utilize her talents. Another criticism is that WWE has never allowed Natalia to truly reach her full wrestling potential. Despite being a technically sound and experienced wrestler, she has often been relegated to mid-card status, overshadowed by other stars like Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. While Natalia has won titles, including the WWE SmackDown and Divas Championships, her reigns have been brief and underwhelming. Many fans and critics believe that WWE has not given her the consistent push or meaningful storylines to showcase her abilities at the main event level. She is often used to elevate younger talent, but is rarely allowed to be the face of the women's division. In her personal life, Natalia has been very open on social media and through appearances on reality TV, particularly on Total Divas. While this exposure has helped grow her fan base, it has also brought a level of scrutiny to her personal life. By sharing intimate details of her relationships, family issues, and personal struggles, she has allowed fans and the public into aspects of her life that may be better left private. Some of her followers appreciate her transparency, but others believe that putting so much of her life in the public eye has detracted from her image as a wrestler, making her more of a reality star than an in-ring competitor at times. Natalia's connection to her father, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and the famous Hart family, while a source of pride, has also placed enormous pressure on her throughout her career. Being part of such a legendary wrestling dynasty has come with high expectations, and comparisons to family members like Bret Hart have followed her throughout her career. While she has worked hard to carve out her own legacy, her association with the Hart family means she is constantly measured against their success. The passing of her father in 2018 added to the emotional burden she has carried publicly, further complicating the balance between her wrestling career and personal life. This familial connection, while prestigious, has often overshadowed Natalia's own achievements and has contributed to the complicated narrative of her wrestling journey. Kidd debuted on WWE programming in 2009, and he and David Hart Smith would capture tag gold the following year. The pair would split in 2010, with Kidd turning heel in the process. Years later, Kidd would hold tag team gold again, this time with Cesaro. During a dark match prior to the June 1st, 2015 edition of WWE Raw, Kidd suffered a spinal cord injury when taking Samoa Joe's Muscle Buster finisher. The injury resulted in Kidd having 16 staples, 4 screws, and a rod inserted in his neck. At the time, Dave Meltzer said that it was unbelievable that Kidd came through as well as he did, as most people who survive the injury end up quadriplegic, such as Superman actor Christopher Reeve. The injury put an end to Kidd's wrestling career, despite the hopes of fans that he could one day step back in the ring. Appearing on the Insight podcast, Kidd made it clear that his time in the ring is finished. I know they say never, but I've been saying never for the last 8 years. No, the truth is, I can do probably in some things 99% of the move, I just can't do the actual bump. And I'm sure I could maybe take a couple of bumps, but at what cost? I don't know, I haven't taken one. While Kidd no longer competes, he has remained a part of WWE as a producer and works closely with the women's division. In the interview, Kidd shared how his work backstage has helped him avoid temptation. I'm very fortunate. I enjoy my work as a producer. If I didn't have that outlet, then I could understand why I'd then maybe try taking a bump and see how that felt and kind of go from there. But I'm very blessed, and luckily I don't have to go down that avenue, so I don't think, I know I'm not going to, though he doesn't wrestle anymore. Kidd's social media profiles are often full of him training alongside his wife Natalia in their private ring. While these glimpses into his personal life fill fans with hope that Kidd, could wrestle again. That isn't the case. I get that. I get those messages a lot, and I get that mindset. I understand where that comes from. I believe Steve Austin has the second highest, at least in terms of WWE wrestlers. As to how high their fusion is, his was C3 and C4, most are C5 and C6, or C6 and C7, mine was C1 and C2. The very top two vertebrae in your body, mine are fused. That's the difference. So, taking into account the fact that Bret is a man who has survived cancer twice and is in his 60s, is a beloved part of so many people's childhoods and an iconic part of pro wrestling's history, you'd think he would get the respect that his long career deserves. Which he does. Until, well, he doesn't. Following the death of longtime friend and former tag team partner Jim Neidhart, it was announced that both the Anvil and the Hitman would be inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame as the Hart Foundation. So, in 2019, the night before WrestleMania 35, the wrestling world was in a jubilant mood, as it usually is when the traditional Hall of Fame ceremony rolls around, a night reserved for those whom WWE feel is fitting as a true legend of the industry, a moment for fans and fellow wrestlers alike to pay respect to the hard work and dedication shown by some of pro wrestling's most notable names. At the Barclays Center in New York, as Bret made his way out in front of the crowd and stepped between the ropes, he was positively gleaming with pride. With Natty Neidhart at his side to remember her father, it was a truly special moment, and one which felt all the more emotionally taut, considering Bret's past with WWE and Vince McMahon. However, in one of the most pointless and sickening moments in recent wrestling memory, the joyful atmosphere was quickly turned to shock and then rage, as a pathetic man-child dressed in Rastafarian hat and fake dreadlocks rushed the ring, grabbing onto Bret and forcing him to the ground. The entire event came to a screeching halt because this disgusting excuse for a human being decided that he was more important and that he needed the attention more than the men who all the fans had actually paid to see. It makes my blood boil. It makes me think less about the human race as a whole, knowing that idiots like this are a part of it. That is why what happened next feels so satisfying. Now, I know that violence is never the answer. I have been a lifelong fan of pro wrestling, but in real life I would consider myself somewhat of a pacifist. I know that we are conscious and intelligent creatures who should always attempt to use our mind and our mouths before ever considering to resort to using our fists. But sometimes you just have to sit back and enjoy. The 26-year-old who jumped into the ring that night was clearly deranged. He must have also been pretty stupid. He attacked a man in his 60s as he was talking about the death of a close friend, surrounded by thousands of fans who were all there to support Bret. But more importantly, the Hitman was surrounded on all sides by thick, hunky security bros and a horde of pro wrestlers who were just chomping at the bit to get their hands on him. But even more importantly, Travis Brown, a trained killer and ex-UFC fighter, was standing right there. What happened next went just about as bad as it's possible to go for the young interrupter. Punches and kicks came from all sides as the men surrounding the ring sprang into action, continued to lay off the smackdown as he was dragged through the arena. The crowning moment was when the man who was formerly known as Dash Wilder landed what can only be described as a well-deserved cheap shot, causing him to go limp as he was carried away. It's so disgusting to attack someone when they aren't looking. You never like to see someone get knocked out. It's barbaric. Alright, we'll just watch it one more time. An over-exuberant fan surpassed our security at ringside and made his way briefly into the ring. The individual was being turned over to the proper authorities, WWE's statement said. The New York police took the 26-year-old into custody, where he was charged with 2 counts of third-degree assault and 1 count of criminal mischief. Bret, always the professional, finished his speech. He then released a statement explaining how he was disappointed in the way in which things played out, but that he suffered no injury during the altercation. From the tragic loss of Owen Hart during a live WWE event to the health struggles and early deaths of family members, their story is a powerful reminder of the intense physical and emotional toll the wrestling industry can take. Despite the adversities, the Harts have left an indelible mark on the world of wrestling, inspiring generations of fans and wrestlers alike. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive into the Hart family's history insightful, Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more wrestling stories and content. Let us know in the comments what part of the Hart family story impacted you the most and what other wrestling families or legends you'd like to see us cover. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and keep the love for wrestling alive.